This is a story about a small town girl who liked writing as a hobby. At the age of 6, she wrote her first story about a rabbit named Rabbit, who had measles. She narrated the story to her mother. Her mother liked it a lot and praised her for her effort. She also encouraged her to write more. In school, she was always kind of shy and unsociable. She would live in a world of fantasy, and she always kept on writing something into her scrubby little notebook. At the age of 15, her grandmother died, with whom she was very close. But misfortunes in life never come alone. The relationship with her father soured, and her mother became seriously ill with a brain-disabling disease. Her mother's condition was getting worse by the day. For this little girl, her mother's illness was the biggest shock of her life. Very soon her mother passed away, and she felt the loss deeply. So life went on, and one day she was reading a local newspaper, and she came across an advertisement for a job as an English teacher in Portugal. She was in search of a job and wanted to start a new life, so she took the opportunity and went to Portugal to teach. One day she met a TV journalist in a bar. They talked with each other and found out that they both shared an interest in English novelist Jane Austen. They liked each other's company, and soon they started spending more and more time together. After a year, they got happily married, and a year later, they were blessed with a beautiful daughter. But again, her life took a dark turn. She became the victim of domestic abuse, and one day, her husband drove her out of the house. She left the country with her newborn child. She was unemployed and was surviving on state benefits, while taking care of her daughter as a single parent. This was a very dark period of her life. She was so poor that her friends helped her to pay the rent. Sometimes she wouldn't eat so that her daughter would have more food. And because of all of these circumstances, she considered herself a complete failure. And it seemed like that band of misfortunes would never take an end. She fell into a deep depression. She had no hope to survive, and she even tried to take her own life at one point. But her daughter inspired her to seek help, and eventually she decided to do what she could do best: to write fantasy novels. She would forget about everything while sitting at her desk, and so she started writing more and more. She would often go to the cafes to work on her book while her child had a nap. Although she couldn't even afford food at the cafe, she only ordered 1 cup of coffee during her writing sessions, just so the cafe owner wouldn't kick her out. Somehow this way she finished the first 3 chapters of her novel. She sent the story to a publisher, but unfortunately, they quickly gave her a pass. She sent it to another publisher, but again, the answer was no. Her mailbox was filling up with rejection letters. After sending her story to 12 different publishers and getting rejected by every single one of them, she began losing confidence in her book. Finally, one day, the editor at Bloomsbury Publishing Company sat down to read the story. Fortunately, her 8-year-old daughter was there too. The little girl loved the opening chapters, and she was very curious to read the complete story. This made the publisher agree to publish her book, but the publisher also advised her to find a full-time job and said that she wouldn't make any money writing fantasy stories for children. In June 1997, at the age of 31, her first novel, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, was published with an initial print run of 1,000 copies. When readers tasted the story, the demand for her books began to rise dramatically. 5 months later, her book won its first award, the Nestlé Smarties Book Prize. And soon, J.K. Rowling went from being an unemployed, depressed, single mother living off state benefits to one of the best-selling authors of all time. Her first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, is one of the best-selling books ever written. Currently, the 7-book series has sold more than 450 million copies worldwide. The movie franchise based on her books has grossed $7.7 billion in box office revenue. In 2004, Forbes magazine named J.K. Rowling as the first person ever to become a billionaire by writing books. She didn't become successful overnight. She had to face a lot of misfortunes and rejections while taking care of her child as a single mother and fighting depression. All those failures helped her to become stronger and helped her finish her first fantasy novel. Despite all of her wealth and fame, she never forgot the hardship and pain she had to experience. She has donated so much of her wealth to charity that she lost her billionaire status in 2011. J.K. Rowling's story shows that hard work really does pay off. From her life, we can learn that if you have a dream and if you keep getting rejected, you should not let that stop you. If you hit rock bottom, don't let it cripple you. Instead, use rock bottom as a foundation, not a conclusion. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. That were J.K. Rowling's words at her Harvard commencement speech. This is Dare to Do Motivation, real life stories. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.